Hello my friends, I hope you're doing great, and let's go to the military map review, initially focusing our attention on deep analysis of the situation happening on the front lines. Let's go to the most difficult for now for Ukraine. It's Konstantinivka direction, where Russia, I wouldn't say jamming Ukrainian forces, but Russia performs multiple of the infiltration attacks to the city, and for the last 2 weeks they have expanded the territorial gains in the settlement. But still, those are the small infiltration attacks. They try to accumulate the forces for the further movement within this city. We spot the record number of the Russian flags being put there. It was all confirmed by the drone video, so it is nothing that Russia propaganda tries to make. No, this is the real picture, and it's been confirmed by pro-Ukrainian or Ukrainian sources, like for example Micro's analyst, the map that I'm using right now, or even the deep state military map. Here they also say about the movement of the Russian army within Konstantinivka. So it was yesterday and it is today. Russia went in Ilinivka, Bereztok, but still deep state puts Konstantinivka into the gray zone, mostly because there could be the presence of Ukrainian armed forces, like for example Ukrainian soldiers were spotted on the street of Shmit. One of the Ukrainian soldiers of the assault regiment Tsunami of the Joint Assault Brigade of the National Police of Ukraine Lut films his surrounding in Konstantinivka. It doesn't mean that he was surrounded, no, he just films what is happening around on his camera. So this is the guy. He says that everything is all right. He is on positions and he films that he's not being captured in a place. So everything so far is okay for him personally, and there is no vivid presence of the Russian soldiers, at least in this area where he was filming the video. The video was published yesterday. I wonder why he was alone on his mission, but it is understandable that Ukraine is not keeping lots of the infantry forces in Konstantinivka. It is simply dangerous. So Ukraine mostly defends with the help of the drones, but Russians, then they go to the urban environment, they hide in the basements, they hide in the ruined buildings. It's very hard to aim them with the same drone drops or FPVs. So judging on this situation happening in Konstantinivka, I do expect for the Russian army to occupy the settlement pretty much fast, maybe even the next months, we'll see. But Russia managed to deploy significant resources to this particular direction, and that is their main goal, which could be also presented by the Russian propaganda as the huge victory in the first major cities that forms the iron belt of Ukrainian defense in Donbass. But still, it's not the decisive victory for Russia. It is also understandable. And how many troops Russia is willing to sacrifice in this attack operation in Konstantinivka? Well, only God knows, but Putin doesn't want to stop. And even occupation of this settlement doesn't destroy the iron belt. Konstantinivka is big, but there are other settlements, like for example Kramatorsk and Slaviansk, and the fight for Konstantinivka is ongoing for already very long time, since I would say the occupation of Toretsk, Russia tries to propel to Konstantinivka, and for the same reason they wanted to occupy Chasiv Yar, but here I would say Russia is the least successful, because the part of the Chasiv Yar, some of the areas are still in a gray zone, as well as the nearby village Mykolaiivka, where Ukraine keeps the presence. So Russia is out of the main vector to go from the east, and that's why they had to propel with significant forces straight forward to Konstantinivka from Toretsk. That's the worst possible variant for them if you speak about the losses, but the command came and the Russians are going with infiltration attacks and mid-wave attacks as well. And guys, before we continue, I want to tell you about the ground news. This is the platform that I use all the time. Every morning I'm checking the media outlets, and the ground news is the absolutely fantastic news aggregator that gives me all of the information from all around the world, and especially for the topic that I need the most, the news about Ukraine. They have a dedicated chapter about it. And we may check out and click some of the news, like for example, yesterday it was G7 meeting. President Zelensky was presented there. He spoke with Trump as many other leaders, so G7 allies scrambled to put Ukraine back atop Trump's agenda as a war drags on. And Donald Trump himself mentioned that Ukraine might become his main priorities after the war in Iran ends. Well, we'll see if it ends or not. But nevertheless, the topic is very hot, so almost 200 of the media sources, media outlets have reported about it. We have the biased distribution, which is given by the ground news, also the factuality report. It's high factuality news, of course, we have the evidence of it. We might see the ownership and all of the articles plus the origin of the articles. We have the world map, and you may go through all of the articles, all of the media that report about this particular topic. So you have the factuality report, ownership of the media, and the biased distribution. Usually I choose high factuality or very high factuality, like for example here. Plus I compare news outlets because they might present the same news from the different perspective, and to understand the real picture of what is happening you need to cross-check the information. And the ground news is not just about Ukraine, as I mentioned, it's the world news. You have all of the hot topics, you have reports, you have absolutely everything. So my recommendation for you guys to subscribe for the ground news, and you may do it with my personal link. It's ground.news/Dennis, and you may find it in the video description right below, or scan the QR code available on the screen. With my link, you may have 40% of discount, especially for the Father's Day, which is coming. I really like their application website. I constantly check it, and even before our cooperation, I was subscribed for the ground news. This is how interesting the source really is, and it really saves me the time. So instead of scrolling through the media, I just go through the single website and I understand the real picture, what is happening in the world. So ground news, thank you so much for being the partner of the channel. You are the only sponsor that I have right now, and yeah, thank you for sponsoring this video as well. And now let's continue with the video. And guys, I want to return back to Konstantinivka because it is very important what is happening out there, especially with this new Russian attack attempt from Stepanivka. Russian small infiltration group went to the local village Davydov and also Roskishna village. They put several of the flags, and we don't have yet the confirmation that this attack was kaputted by Ukrainian drones, but I think that this particular Russian attack will be cancelled. There is no variant for Russians to join their forces to attack Konstantinivka from the western side to the east. There are also some of the war obstacles that limit the exit for the Russian soldiers from Dovha-Balka village. Well, as the variant, they may try to accumulate their forces in Dovha-Balka and break through to their group in Konstantinivka, but we'll see. I think that the jump towards Mykolaiv village is more risky for them. First of all, this village is very small, with limited places to hide, and also it is in the middle of nowhere. Around there are lots of the fields, so of course for Russia it's more profitable to go to Konstantinivka from every sort of the direction. This is the huge kill zone for them if they try to go across the fields or using the field roads. Even tree lines, they're dangerous for Russians right now. I thought that during the summer campaign Russians could be more successful with their infiltration attacks because of the leaves on the trees, but I was a little bit wrong, because Ukraine already has special tools like thermal cameras to find out Russian soldiers. Yeah, before Ukraine wasn't lack of the technology, thermal cameras, but now it's not an issue. Every drone could be equipped with thermal camera. Ukraine has many of those. Alright, and I want to read out the situational analysis from the deep state itself, what they say about Konstantinivka. The situation around Konstantinivka is unfolding in the most difficult scenario, as the enemy has emerged from all sides on the outskirts of the city and is exerting active pressure and infiltrating into the depths of the populated area. The enemy infiltrations are even spotted in the eastern part from the city in Novodmitrivka, so this is the new dugout of the Russian army, or you may call it a foothold, where Russia tries to accumulate their forces and later on attack Ukrainian positions in Konstantinivka itself. Plus analysis are saying about two main footholds, one in Bereztok and one in Ilinivka. This is the western part or southwestern part of Konstantinivka. Having reached the necessary positions, the enemy is gradually moving on to a long-term absorption of the city, where parts of the scenario of the Pokrovsk are visible. For some reason, the same mistakes are being made with attempts at chaotic mob-ups of the city while the enemy has space for advancement, and can change its positions as needed. So Deep State says about the problems actually with the Ukrainian defense in Konstantinivka, and definitely it's like that, and Pokrov scenario is working for Russians. Simply Russia has more of the resources in this particular direction. If you speak about South, Dnipropetrovsk, Zaporizhia direction, there Ukraine has an advantage and the Russian logistics is suffering. Well, we cannot state the same for Konstantinivka because Russia managed again to accumulate lots of the reinforcements before. Deep State source communicated with the soldiers on the ground, also with officers, and they say that the forces are disproportionately large on the Russian side, simply lots of the infantry, and that infantry goes into the city. The Deep State says that enemy tries to break into the northern part of the settlement to cut Ukrainian supplies through the main road that goes from Drushkivka. The enemy can do this in the simplest way by physically reaching the area with infantry and arranging ambushes and coordinating their drone fire control as it was in Pokrovsk. This dynamic of advancements can be seen in particular on the map, which is represented in a gray zone. So yeah, it is like that. At the same time, the enemy is leveling off the populated area of Konstantinivka, turning it into complete ruin, which will soon be impossible to even hold. The source says that the Russians start to make some of the crazy AI-generated pictures that Ukrainian soldiers are surrendering to them, but it is not truth. Or Russians share those kind of the pictures of themselves and how they surrender to Ukrainian soldiers, telling that those are Ukrainians. So collapse of the front in Konstantinivka, hundreds of Ukrainian army soldiers in captivity. And they say that it is happening in Konstantinivka. Then de facto those were the Russian soldiers who were filmed before, and we have the video about it. It happened in 2024 in the Kursk Oblast. Those are Russians and they surrender to Ukrainian soldiers here, voluntarily surrendered. Later on, they were taken to Ukrainian army truck and delivered to Ukrainian territory and Ukrainian prisons. Maybe some of them were already exchanged. So the Russian disinformation is working full scale to present kind of the limited Russian success, but success in Konstantinivka as something really outstanding. As the Deep State says, Konstantinivka is the gateway for opening Slavansk-Kramatorsk agglomeration. The enemy knows this, understands it, and takes it into account for its further offensive actions once Konstantinivka falls, and it's a matter of time, as Deep State says, and here I agree with that. Unfortunately, Drushkivka will be next, which now plays an extremely important logistics role, and after that Kramatorsk. As soon as Konstantinivka comes under the control of the enemy, logistics of the defense forces in the area will change radically, creating additional difficulties in movements, and even staying in Kramatorsk will become extremely dangerous, where enemy pilots will do their job. And next, Russians will have to open the new gateway to Kramatorsk and Slavansk. If before the gateway was Liman, but with the supply cuts, it's not possible to move any longer across the Siversky Donets River, Russia tried their assault from Siversk direction. The assault for the Russian army is happening with a limited success here, so they moved to Alexandrivka, but this expansion goes without infantry. From the Russian side, mostly Russia operates with drones and aviation gliding bomb strikes. However, in Kryva Luka there was the infiltration attack that was partially successful for Russia. They went to the very small village, just several of the houses there. However, all of the attempts to supply their group, they usually finish with kaboom of the Russian vehicles, motorcycles and ATVs. Zakitne Donetsk Oblast, Ukrainian 81st Air Assault Brigade, Apache destroyed Russian BMPs. We have geolocation image of that failed Russian attack. The Russian convoy attack happened in the same direction. There were several of the vehicles, cars, motorcycles, and this mid-attack was cancelled by Ukrainian drones. It is kind of rare to see Russian convoys nowadays because they usually been cancelled. So Russia tries to move mostly with the infantry attacks. However, sometimes they use army vehicles or usual vehicles, civilian cars as well. Yeah, something absolutely went wrong. The local motorcycle club was cancelled together with some of the Russian UAZ vehicles. Like, for example, here, yeah, they just dropped their bikes and went to the local tree line, but Ukraine cancelled their transport, so the Russians stayed there, and later on they were kaboomed using Baba Yaga or just regular drone drops. And they also have losses a little bit behind in Siversk, so Russia tries to move towards Slaviansk, but this movement is kind of clumsy for now. And from all of the front lines, there are just 3 of the areas where Russia tries to propel. First of all, Konstantinivka, yes, then to Slaviansk with the small attack attempts and small attack convoys, but also in Gulai-Pole direction, south from it, Russia tries to gain more territories with infiltration attacks. The rest of the front lines, they're a standstill for Russia, or Russia loses the ground. So the Iron Belt is still holds together with Konstantinivka despite those small attacks of the Russian army, but Ukraine controls the most of the settlement. We'll see how it goes, but I agree with the deep state analysis that it's just a matter of time and then Russia occupies Konstantinivka. However, at the same time, if we check out what's happening behind the front lines, how Ukraine shuts down the Russian logistics, so potentially Konstantinivka could be the last city which Russia would occupy in this war. Yes, there is even variant for that, because every war is all about logistics, and if Russia fails to present their forces at the proper time and feed them with food, ammunition, Russia might fail. Not just with attacks, but also with their defense. And this is what is happening in the southern direction and also in Liman itself. In Dnipropetrovsk direction, Ukraine, of course, has an upper hand, and for the last week there were 3 of the successful attacks of Ukrainian army. You see those blue-colored territories. As for the size, those are similar to Konstantinivka, if we speak about the square kilometers. There were several of the desperate attack attempts of the Russian army to return back everything as it was, but they failed. Plus, Ukraine causes some of the losses for Russians within the front line range. Artillery systems are being hit by Ukrainian drones and Ukrainian aviation strikes. The picture looks like that. That's the border between Dnipropetrovsk and Donetsk Oblast. As you might see, Russians also had 2 of the infiltration attacks there, but they were cancelled by Ukrainian drone operators. So Ukraine has in general an upper hand in this direction and more resources, especially drones, compared to the Russian army. Russia is active in Donbass, but at the same time in Zaporizhia they definitely fail. And here we have some of the videos of the Ukrainian drone operators and how they demolished the Russian supplies for the distance of 96 kilometers. This fuel truck went on fire. I see a couple of the Russian soldiers were leaving it, so they survived, but the truck is no-go absolutely. Alright, Ukraine has reached a new milestone in this war. Fully autonomous drones have killed human soldiers for the first time in the human history. It means that the drone on its own flown to the enemy-controlled territory, chose the target and cancelled it without any sort of the involvement of humans. Yeah, it sounds exactly like a Skynet, but at the same time it gives some of the advantages for Ukrainian army because it's impossible to jam those drones. They basically use machine vision and they don't need any sort of the signal to connect themselves to the drone operator. You can simply operate drones without drone operators. And yeah, of course, there is the moral aspect of the story, whether we should allow AI to flatline humans, but that's the territory we're all evolving, and I don't like it, honestly. But Ukraine doesn't have the other choice but to introduce this sort of the technology to cut Russian supplies. So the cause is good, but after this war is over, many other not so good forces could use the same technology in their attacks. So yes, buckle up for the Skynet use, and American government was working full scale to introduce the same technology to its own army. That's why there was some of the beef between Pentagon and Atrophic, the AI company that was involved into that military cooperation, but it looks like there are other companies who are willing to take the lead in the same sphere, and I'm speaking about Palantir. Ukraine continued to cooperate with allies like, for example, Sweden, to build those ground robotic drones which are used to evacuate army personnel from the front lines. I saw several of the videos with those MAU drones, and most of the evacs, they're successful, but there were also a couple of the videos shared on the Russian channels that those evacuation drones were hit by FPVs, and sadly Ukrainian soldiers lost their lives, but still it's the better alternative than to perform evacuation using just random trucks and also other Ukrainian soldiers, because the risk for the evacuation group is also very, very high. Here with a ground unmanned vehicle, you don't have that factor, and it's better to try at least to evacuate someone from the front lines than to leave soldier bleeding out on its own. That's the imminent death. Here at least you have the chance. And I hope that they will improve the mobility and the speed of those evacuation drones, because for now they're kind of slow and a little bit clumsy. Well, they have good off-road capabilities, but with the current speed they're good targets for the Russian FPVs. And the capsule itself, well, it has anti-shrapnel protection, not more than that. Direct hit of FPV sadly penetrates the capsule kind of easily. And some of the article that was published right after the G7 summit in France. Donald Trump said that he is willing to help Ukraine, but as the return, he demands the European support of his Iranian campaign. Well, we are not sure for now, but there is the chance for the Iranian war again to escalate to even hotter stage than it was a few months ago. But overall, President Zelensky is very positive after meeting with Donald Trump, and he said that maybe America will provide Ukraine with blueprints of Patriot systems and Patriot missiles, so Ukraine may develop those in collaboration with partners, United States and Europe. So Trump is ready to increase pressure on Russia and support Ukraine in exchange for allies' assistance on Iran, ceasefire with Israel and security in the Strait of Hormuz. European leaders noted that it was constructive talk, although they cautioned against expensive optimism due to the volatility of Trump's positions. Yes, today he might say one thing, and tomorrow he will call Putin, sends his envoy Vitkov to Russia, and completely changes his opinions. Yeah, that's all about Donald Trump. Alright, Ukrainian Defense Minister Fedorov yesterday gave a very big interview, and he noted that Ukraine has around 6 months, half a year, to use the advantage on the front line. Now Ukraine has better drones, Ukraine hurts Russian logistics, but eventually, as it happened many times before, Russians will adapt. They just need some of the time and to figure out what to do. Their system is rotted down, military command, and they're volatile, but nevertheless they have the goal to gain more ground in Ukraine and finally to occupy the vast Ukrainian territory, so they will try to do something with those Ukrainian drone strikes. And for this reason, I think personally that Ukraine may start some of the large offensive operation. Whether it's gonna be in the southern part of Ukraine or somewhere else, I'm gonna explain you in my next video. Well guys, that's all what I want to say in this video, and please don't forget to check out the link for the ground news. It's available in the video description right below, or scan the QR code available on the screen. I use the ground news all the time, and it's my recommendation for you to check it out and try with my personal link, and that's how you also help this channel. My friends, I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.